right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you with our first non interview episode since our last interview, or no, our last episode of the season. That should have been worded differently, but we're going to roll with it, Jake. So, the last episode that
Happens.
you and I did with analysis was after the Rams lost to Detroit, and we kind of recapped the season. And then since then, we've been doing our NFL draft prospect interviews. But today, we are going to talk about free agency so far for our Los Angeles Rams because two big free agency moves have been made today. The date of this recording is March 11th. So if you're listening after March 11th, guys, there might have been another signing or a few signings that we're not going to talk about in this episode, but we're talking about everything the Rams have done in free agency as of the night of March 11th, which is tonight. Jake, two big signings: guard Jonah Jackson and tight end Colby Parkinson. So, Jake, I want to get your analysis on these picks. I'm going to give my analysis as well, but I'm going to hand it to you first because Rams fans are, as you and I know, just elated about these picks. I know you and I feel the same, but I'm going to start off with Jonah Jackson. I want to get your analysis on this pick because we signed him to be our left guard. He's from the Lions. He's done very well over in Detroit. Signing Jonah Jackson, Jake, has some implications, positive implications, I might add, for our offensive line and where people might be moving around to. So I want you to go ahead and preview that for us and give your analysis on the Rams signing of left guard Jonah Jackson.
Yes, it does, Alexis. It does have implications, good implications, as you mentioned. For all of you that were Steve Avila to center truthers, including myself, you win. He is going to move to center. And this isn't like an anti-Coleman Shelton thing either. This is, in my opinion, you're adding somebody in Jonah Jackson who is going to beef up the interior. We look back at, days where Drew Brees and that Saints offensive line that kept him protected. He didn't have the best tackles in the world, but he had a really good interior up front. You look at Patrick Mahomes. I know they spent a lot of money on Orlando Brown, and I get that. And they've spent a lot of money on guys like Juwan Taylor. They've done that, right? But the guys in the interior, guys like Creed Humphrey and, Trey, name totally escaping me.
Smith.
Trey Smith, there we go. They've spent money on those guys. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. Like, I really like the idea of beefing up the front. And I think also it speaks to what Chris Sims was saying in regards to the Rams. This maturation. First off, let me just say this, Alexis, before we even get into Jonah Jackson here. Sean McVay is in year 7, year 8 as a coach, and he is already changing his philosophy. They were, a big, like the lifeblood essentially of this offense was the outside zone, right? They were an outside zone running team. And so to move away from that so young in your coaching career and recognize that, hey, this gap run scheme is really working for us and running in duo and having these big maulers up front instead of these technicians that, yes, they're good and they're athletic, but they don't have that punch. And so if you go up against a bigger defense line, you're going to get stuffed. And that's the thing that we've seen. So I think Sean McVay has shown a lot of maturity in the fact that they've kind of changed what they've been looking at. And we saw that last year. We even mentioned it last year. Avila wasn't a pick that we kind of really expected them to make because he didn't really fit their archetype, right? They went more bigger bodied, thick with 2 C's in the inside. They normally don't do that. I mean, Coleman Shelton, barely 300-pound center. That was the Rams, thing. So to see them now with Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson and now Steve Avila at center, they are going to be a nightmare, Alexis, to deal with week in and week out. And with Jonah Jackson, this is a great run blocker, first off, but he's not a bad pass protector. He only gave up 2 sacks this past year, despite the fact that he was dealing with injury almost the whole year. And when you talk about the fact that he has familiarity, albeit it was his first year in the NFL, but he has familiarity working with a Matthew Stafford in 2020. That's fascinating. But in addition to that, he's a former Pro Bowler. His second year in the league, he was a Pro Bowler. So this is somebody that really is worth a damn. And
Yeah.
another thing I want to mention is I'm sure you've seen Brandon Thorne on Twitter before. He's like gospel in the offensive line world, right? He just, what he says, like I trust what he says more than PFF or really anybody. I'll watch the film and then I'll see Brandon Thorne's take on a player that maybe I didn't like, and I will go back to the film and be like, no, I gotta find out why I don't like that. Like, why do I feel this way? Brandon Thorne was a very complimentary of Jonah Jackson. He went as far as to say that Jonah Jackson was the best guard by quite a margin in this free agency class. That gets me excited. This is somebody that I think is going to have huge implications for the Rams. The ability to move Steve Avila to center is great. Getting Kevin Dotson before the tampering period in free agency, we're just going to call it free agency because there's been like 50 signings today. But the opportunity to do that, get Kevin Dotson before all hell broke loose, was even better. And now you look at the offensive line, the big uglies, and for whatever reason, I feel like some Rams fans weren't as on the offensive line train as maybe I was, definitely where you were. We've always kind of, pushed for offensive linemen. I've never felt super comfortable with the guys up front. I mean, there are guys that you like here and there, but I never felt like Coleman Shelton was a franchise center. So right now, Alexis, I'm in a position where, for the next 3 years, which is what the Rams are telling us with these signings, 3-year deal for Dotson, 3-year deal for Jackson, and we'll talk about Colby Parkinson, soon. But these 3-year deals are telling us the Rams have already set aside their window to win a Super Bowl 2 or even 3 with Matthew Stafford, and it's the next 3 years. That's what it's telling us. It's also telling us that that window is going to allow them some, flexibility and the capability to re-sign and extend a Puka Nacua, a Kobe Turner, and Steve Avila from this draft class. So, Alexis, there were other guys that I liked more. To be fair, Michael Onwenu was one of them. Okay? Definitely liked Michael Onwenu a lot. Robert Hunt, before I saw that he was $20 million a year, and the Rams weren't going to agree to a 5-year deal because they have that 3-year window in mind. But after, further evaluation, and again, I'll say this for people that didn't know, I didn't do videos on Jonah Jackson. I didn't put him on any lists because, we were talking about it off air. I didn't think the Lions would let him go. I didn't think they'd let go a 27-year-old left guard who's been a Pro Bowler. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, well, like I was telling you, I completely spaced on the fact that he was a free agent. He wasn't even, on my radar. Thought maybe, when I thought about it, like what you just said, he would seem like a guy that the Lions would want to give an extension to. So it just wasn't something that was on my radar. But when I saw the signing, as everyone else did today, I loved it. I mean, as you alluded to earlier, the offensive line has been something that, we've kind of talked about. And me, especially, I feel like every year I'm a little obnoxious with it. I'm always kind of screaming about the offensive line to the point where people are like, get over it. And I get it. Sometimes it's been obnoxious, but hey, I love seeing it. I love the idea of having Jackson, Avila, and Dotson on the interior. I mean, to me, that is just as solid as it comes. And then we're not going to talk about, the draft, but when we do talk about it, you and I have some picks potentially, depending on how the draft goes in the first round for left tackle, that if that were to happen, I mean, I don't know that there's a better offensive line in the league, to be honest. If you go ahead and draft that insane left tackle, which there's quite a few in the first round. So this Jonah Jackson signing, again, kind of what you alluded to, really shows that the Rams are hell-bent on protecting Matthew Stafford. Not that they haven't been in the past, but I think, again, you've mentioned this 3-year window. We've talked about what we think the Rams' goal is for 2024, 2025. maybe 2026, but really the next 2 years especially. So it's no surprise when you think about it, when you see what they're doing with this offensive line. This offensive line is built for a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That is what they are doing. They know, like you mentioned earlier, teams like the Chiefs, you know that in order to go deep into the playoffs in this day and age in the NFL, you have to have a solid offensive line. It does not matter how good your quarterback is. It does not matter what he does. If he's not protected and doesn't have time, you're not going to succeed in the NFL. And I think that the Rams, especially in the past couple years, have started to really focus on that offensive line and really put in the effort to make sure that they are as high quality as they can get. So very love the signing. I think Jonah's going to do very well on our offensive line. Like you mentioned earlier, I think Avila is going to be fine at center. I understand maybe where people are coming from. He was very good at guard, but I think he's also going to be very good at center. So I'm not too worried about it. As you mentioned, he's experienced playing center at TCU, so this is not a foreign position to him. But Jake, other than solidifying and really helping our offensive line with that Jonah Jackson signing, let's talk about Colby Parkinson, which this signing came as a surprise to me. I'll be honest, not so much the position. I was thinking the Rams were going to go out and sign a tight end in free agency, but Colby Parkinson was another guy that wasn't really on my radar. However, you and I both really like Colby. He was on this show when he was being drafted, when he was in the NFL draft process. We brought him in out of Stanford. We interviewed him. He was a very nice guy back then. I'm sure he is as well now. Coming from Seattle, Jake, my initial thoughts on Colby Parkinson is run blocking, the run game. You look at the two signings today between him and Jonah, and I've seen non-Rams fans commenting on Twitter or X or whatever you call it that Kyren Williams better be jumping up everybody's fantasy football draft boards because this guy is going to help block for him. He is a very good run blocking tight end. He also, is notable in the passing game. I'll let you talk about that. But Jake, looking at this Colby Parkinson signing, what does this tell you about the Rams' plan for their offense next season? And what are your overall thoughts on Colby?
Yeah, I love this move even more than the Jonah Jackson move. But I think when you already have a move that happens and it's on that side of the ball, and you can kind of paint a picture a little bit of how things are going to look. And I can never help myself. Anytime something like that happens, I have to make a quick depth chart post on Twitter. It never fails. It will never stop failing. But I love this pickup because let's just say this. I mean, Tyler Higbee is still in the plans at the very least. Like, they're not going to cut him. That's not what this is. He tore his ACL on a freak tackle, a dirty tackle by Kirby Joseph, which we've talked about ad nauseum on this channel. So, on this, show. So we're not going to be doing that now, but that's why he is out. So we don't know when he'll be back. That was a serious injury. The other tight end who the Rams got as a throw-in in the Jalen Ramsey deal, Hunter Long, was actually looking pretty solid in the blocking game. And then he suffered a season-ending injury as a personal protector in the punt game. So both those guys are injured. So that leaves fifth-round rookie, now second-year guy out of Clemson, guy that I celebrated big time on this show, the live stream, Davis Allen. Very high on Davis Allen. He's in his early 20s. So nothing about this signing should make you concerned about Davis Allen's development. Davis Allen has more of a chance to fail if he's thrown into the fire as the lead guy right away at a position where you essentially have to play wide receiver and offensive lineman. It's one of the hardest positions, and it's one of those positions that takes 3 or 4 years where you start to really see the fruits of your labor. And so I think with Colby Parkinson, not only does it make sense based on the timeline that he hasn't really taken off yet, but when you look at who he's been around, they signed Gerald Everett. They traded for Noah Fant. They have Will Dissly. People forget Will Dissly has had some moments with that team. He's a very good blocker. He's the second best blocker according to PFF in the league at tight end. just below George Kittle. That's not a bad name to be behind. So the point I'm making here is this guy already has a pretty high ceiling, and he's not behind, in my opinion. I think he's just getting started, and he's only 25 years old. So 25 years old, the 3-year window I'm going to keep bringing up here, talking about him being what, 28, 29 at the end of that contract. Whether he comes back or not, I don't know. But Davis Allen won't even be 26 at the end of his deal. So I like this because he's going to complement Davis Allen, and Davis Allen will complement Colby Parkinson. Find me a tight end room in the league right now that has, that's taller. You have 6'7" Parkinson and 6'6" Davis Allen. What is the one area the Rams really struggled in with that top 10 offense last year? It was the red zone. And when you have big targets for a Hall of Fame quarterback in Matthew Stafford, it's a little bit easier to score in said red zone. So I feel really good about this, for the first reason being that Parkinson is a giant, 6'7". He's athletic. I mean, just look at him at Stanford. If you didn't watch the tape, I definitely think you should go back and watch it. Seattle wasn't utilized enough. Seattle fans were telling me that today. They were replying to my stuff saying, hey, we like him. He's a good dude. He wasn't utilized enough. Good blocker, though. That's what I kept reading. So this guy's a good blocker. You have to block to, of course, be in that Sean McVay offense. Sean McVay is also a former tight ends coach. So there is a love there. But I think he has a chance to be the best tight end in the Sean McVay era. I think the Rams did pay him more than maybe you might have wanted them to. I'm not saying you, Alexis, but you at home, the viewer, because I understand 3 years, $22.5 million for a guy that didn't have 600 yards, or he was barely over 600 yards, didn't have 60 catches, only had 4 touchdowns, is concerning. But that's not his fault. You can only do, so much based on the opportunities you're given. And I think the tape speaks volumes to the potential that Parkinson displays. This is also not an overpay. Okay. The reason it's not an overpay is because the Rams weren't the only team interested in Parkinson. Okay. A lot of teams liked him. This guy, teams are looking around the league right now at the Seahawks like, what were you doing sitting on these 3 tight ends and not really utilizing them? I mean, they traded for Noah Fant and they just signed him to over $10 million a year, and they didn't even utilize him as like a go-to target. So Parkinson to me, Alexis, makes a lot of sense for a few reasons, but I understand paying him for what he's going to be scares people away because they instantly think of Jared Cook, who, by the way, wasn't that bad. I think he gets a little bit of a bad rep. There wasn't a lot of weapons in that offense. He did the best he could. But Colby Parkinson is going to be a fan favorite. I'm telling you right now. It's really unfortunate what happened to Tyler Higbee. It might take him out of the long-term look with the Rams, but they don't have to make that move now. They're going to let him figure things out with the injury. We'll see when he comes back. But at the start, week 1 of the season for the Rams, it's going to be Colby Parkinson as your starting tight end. And Davis Allen didn't get demoted. I don't think the plan was to ever put Davis Allen in that position that early on in his career, where he still needs to develop as not only a receiver, but as a blocker. Whereas Colby Parkinson has really developed into a quality blocker that can add something to the running game, but he's being underrated in the fact this guy can go up and provide a big target and a big weapon in a big key spot, 3rd down at the goal line for Matthew Stafford. So I love this pickup, Alexis. I think what they're telling us, actions speak louder than words. The Rams continue every year. Sean McVay continues to shake things up with the offense because they don't want to be predictable. They don't want to go just because it was good enough last year and they got to 10-7 doesn't mean it'll be good enough this year. I like the idea of keeping yourself a step above the rest. And I think that's what the Rams are doing with this move.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I don't think, as you touched on, for people who might think that the Parkinson signing has anything to do with Davis Allen, it really doesn't. I think they're 2 completely different tight ends. In my mind, whether it's correct or not, I think Parkinson was brought in simply to be, not to just be that run blocking tight end, but I think that that is his appeal. I think that's what the Rams were looking for with him. And then, like you mentioned, red zone threat. He's a huge guy. Definitely can help out in those plays in the red zone. And then Davis Allen, in my mind, is a little bit, you watch him play. He's like very fluid. He's very slippery. He's more of that receiving tight end to me, more so than Colby Parkinson. Not that they both can't be receiving tight ends, not that Davis Allen can't work on run blocking and be a run blocker. That's not what that means. I just think that off the bat, they might have two very different roles in the offense. I think Parkinson will probably have a slightly bigger role than Allen to start off the season, as Jake touched on. But yeah, I think this signing makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting because I do think the Rams are going to have to let someone at tight end go. I think, unfortunately, Bryson Hopkins could be on his way out soon. Don't want to speculate this early, but that's including Tyler Higbee. That's five pretty solid tight ends in the Rams tight end room now. So we'll have to see what they do there. But yeah, both of these signings, Jake, I really like them. And again, two guys that were not totally on my radar. Maybe the position was, the picks weren't, but I have no issues with it. I think that they're both going to really help this offense a lot. I'm really excited about Jonah Jackson at left guard. I just think that that's great. I think that he's going to make a huge impact there. And I know what a lot of Rams fans are saying right now throughout the day. I've had it in my mentions. It's, where's the defense? What's going on defense? Why are we not signing anybody on defense? Why are we paying a tight end? We need an edge. But as Jake and I mentioned earlier, guys, like, it is very early on. Jake and I have both, throughout this episode, been checking to make sure that the Rams haven't signed someone as we speak, quite literally, because signings are still coming in, trades are still coming in. So there's still a lot of time. It doesn't mean that the Rams aren't going to sign anybody on defense. It doesn't mean that they might not trade for somebody. Just the way that it shook out today is that so far, Jonah Jackson and Colby Parkinson are the only free agency pickups. I don't suspect they'll be the last. Jake, if we want to talk about very briefly some positions we think they're going to go after, I know there's an edge rusher that you and I both think they're going to pick up. No, it's not Brian Burns. He's already signed with the New York Jets in a massive, New York Giants in a massive deal. But Jake, why don't you talk about Danielle Hunter, someone who you and I think is going to potentially end up in a Rams uniform?
Well, it's funny you should say that. So while we were doing this, the 49ers just came to terms on a 2-year deal, with the pass rusher from Carolina, Yetur Gross-Matos. I believe he came out of Penn State. I remember that draft, man. Time flies. Don't you feel old watching these guys that become free agents?
That we interviewed and then they've already completed their rookie contract. Yeah, all the time.
And that's why I had such a hard time getting through that sentence, because I'm like processing in my head. I was like, wait a minute. We were just talking about him as a prospect, and now he's already, like you just said. But the 49ers doing that, him and going out and getting Leonard Floyd, it's got to take him out of Danielle Hunter's sweepstakes, right? So at that point,
yeah,
if he wants to go and win a ring, I mean, if he wants to go and get paid, then he'll just sign wherever. But if he wants to go and win a ring, not sure there's a better fit than the Rams. I think he'd be a perfect fit in Chris Shula's defense. They need a guy like that. I think the Rams really need a guy like that. I really don't think that they're in a position where they should just, back off and be like, we'll go after, a bargain bin edge. No, I think, in a way, you kind of did yourself a disservice in the secondary. What isn't talked about nearly enough is that Kella Witherspoon had a great year. Darion Kendrick had a pretty good year halfway through and then really struggled towards the end. And Kobe Durant didn't have his best year, but wasn't bad. I think really the secondary was put in a tough spot because while you're getting pressure, up front, you're still not getting that edge pressure consistently. And we saw Byron Young start to kind of drift at the end of the season. He wasn't getting as much pressure. So when you think about it, those are just open-ended stats. I mean, at the end of the year, if you're talking about 55 pressures from Byron Young, for instance, I don't know exactly what the number was off the top of my head, but when you're talking about pressures, those are just open in the air, Alexis. If you get 10 pressures in a game, that goes to your 82 pressure total, then 72 pressures were in the other games. But if they weren't like evenly split, if you're only having giant games here and there, then those are the games where you're going to need some pressure up front, where corners and safeties are covering for 10 seconds on a play. That's too long. And so I think that's the thing that is kind of underrated about the Rams secondary last year, is that everyone likes to crap on them, but there wasn't a ton of pressure on the quarterback. You go back to the Lamar Jackson game, he had a lot of time to throw, did he not? And so I think, we all look at it and like, oh, he got burned here and burned here, but Lamar Jackson had all day to throw, and he had guys like Zay Flowers who can get open. They're quick jitterbug guys that are hard to cover, and so they did their best. And I know that sounds kind of lame, like did their best, but in reality, you can't cover. I don't care if you put Deion Sanders out there, next to, I don't know, Dick Night Train Lane. Those two guys are not covering for more than 20 seconds. Eventually, at some point, you cannot cover for that long. And that's the problem with the Rams last year, and that's why, you and I had mentioned going out and getting an edge defender that could, hopefully mitigate that issue. I think it is now more important than ever because the cornerback market, Alexis, it's Akello Witherspoon, Kendall Fuller, and a lot of blah. I mean, I don't feel super great about it. I really like Isaac Yiadom as kind of like an underrated signing. But as far as a guy to take over as like a number one corner, you only have two options with those, unless you wanted to go older with like Gilmore. But it's not a great corner class, And so then you look in the draft at some point, you'd be like, okay, there's some good corners. I mean, it's a good corner class, top heavy though. So what if you miss out on them, So I think the Rams really need to figure that out. I'd like to see them bring back Kello. I'd like to see them try and, bring back and form a reunion with Darius Williams. I'd like to see them go after Kendall Fuller, who actually had his rookie season under Coach McVay. At the time, he was the offensive coordinator. So I'd like to see those guys. Danielle Hunter, to me, though, Alexis, I'm looking at my board. I made a defensive big board, top 30. Danielle Hunter's one. And the next guy after that hasn't been signed is Chase Young at 5. I would not mind Chase Young. And I think Rams fans need to be aware that Chase Young is very much in play here. But the name that I keep hearing is Danielle Hunter. And since it was Danielle Hunter and it was Brian Burns, and now Brian Burns is on the Giants, I have a feeling the Rams are going to sign Danielle Hunter. I feel very good about that. After Chase Young, Akello, I know they definitely were interested in Andrew Van Ginkel. I'm very upset about that. I would have loved him on this team. He is a stud. Tyrell Dodson would be next up for me to give, Ernest Jones some help next to him. But it depends, Alexis. How are they going to spend this cap? We really don't know. There's so many variables out there. There's some things that are not out there that will be out there. That's all I'm going to say. So there's just so much to think about, but we don't have the full picture yet. Like we don't have the full, story. So it's hard to really say where they're going to go from here. But I think Danielle Hunter, first and foremost, that needs to be the number one target now moving forward here with the free agency period.
Yeah, I agree. I think Danielle Hunter is the name for free agency for the Rams defensively. Because as you and I talked about throughout the season watching the Rams, I mean, there just wasn't enough pressure on the quarterback. There were games that were better than others, but overall it was pretty abysmal. Especially, towards the end, Byron Young, like you said, I think struggled more at the end of the season, and then what was there. So I really think we got to pair somebody opposite him who has experience. I do think the Rams should still go after, an edge rusher in the draft, whether that's the first round, second round, third round, early in the draft. I think that just to build a good rotation of guys who can pressure the quarterback is important because it really alleviates the pressure on our secondary, as you talked about earlier. And then corner, safety, It's pretty good safety free agency class, although they kind of were going off the board this morning when that was all announced. So that was pretty interesting to see how the safeties were being. Sorry if you guys hear my phone, it's over there though. It's ringing. I can't go turn it off. But yeah, so I don't know. I just think that people, again, it's been a day. The Rams will do something on defense. I'm pretty positive that there's going to be some moves. We can't obviously predict 100% what free agency signings will happen, but I think that people just need to be patient on that because I agree with everybody saying that we need to bolster up our defense. It's just we got to do it. And again, I do think like Jake mentioned earlier, there like when you look at the corner position, there's a really top heavy corner class. So if the Rams want to go out in the first round, and we're not talking about the draft this episode, but I'm just making this statement. If the Rams want to go out and draft a corner in the first round, they can do that. But I think it might be worth looking at some free agent corners because if it doesn't play out the way you want in the draft, then you're kind of left in a situation where the secondary is weak.
Yes, I definitely agree with you. We will find out. Again, I think Danielle Hunter makes the most sense. I think we're both in agreement on that. I think most Rams fans want him. I know there are a lot of Rams fans that do not want Chase Young. I'm just saying, keep an eye on Chase Young. Like young, not no pun intended. He is young though.
Was there just a free agent signing?
Yeah, Tommy Townsend is leaving the Chiefs. The
Oh, I
punter.
thought when I was wrapping up my last statement about the secondary, I don't know if people noticed that I was like very slowly talking because I saw your face, something that I thought that the Rams had just made a free agency signing. So I was like, should I stop talking or keep talking? But
No,
it was Tommy
no,
Townsend. Okay. I thought that like you were just about to say that the Rams like signed Neil Hunter or like made a trade or
no,
something. Okay.
no.
No, you're just happy for no reason, I guess, over there, just
I didn't even pick up on
smiling.
my happiness. I mean, I love life. I can't believe this is my life. LeBron
Yeah.
meme over here. But
Yeah. No, okay.
but no,
Well, bummer. All right. Never mind.
no, that's funny though. I never
Well, I
noticed
know that
that.
Jake and I both said before the episode, we both have a tab open, me on my phone and him on his computer to check for free because it's been coming in so fast and furious, and we were like, knowing us, we're gonna start recording and talk about like the free agency for the day as if the Rams have wrapped it up, and while we're recording, they're going to make a big move. So we're like, we need to be checking in case that happens, which the Rams have not done anything since we started recording, but for whatever reason, I just felt like you were about to tell me they did.
No, I was
I
gonna
was wrong.
say that the edge pursuit, right?
Yeah.
The remaining edge defenders that I think are options. Danielle Hunter's one for the
Yeah.
Rams. I think in order, two is Chase Young, three
Hmm.
is a trade for Hassan Reddick, which would only be a 1 year deal,
Right.
but possible. Four is a trade for Josh Sweat. Personally, I would rather trade for Josh Sweat, but that's just me. Five is a trade for Josh Allen. He'd be my number one option. I'd sign
He's
him to a
expensive.
6 year deal, but he's tagged, and I don't know if the Jaguars are going to trade him. So he's five. Number six is Joshua Uche from the New England Patriots. Number seven is Jadeveon Clowney, who was falsely reported to be going back to the Seahawks. It does not appear that is happening. Could happen, has not happened yet. So stop reporting false information. Good Lord. Eight, Michael Dana from the Chiefs, the
Hmm.
fifth rounder out of Michigan. Nine, this would just be hilarious. Kayvon Chason, who the Jaguars drafted with the pick that they got from the Rams for Jalen
Yeah.
Ramsey. I could see them going after him. Now, keep in mind, him being the ninth option there, that's them probably saying we're looking at the draft, but we're going to just sign somebody anyway. And 10 is draft Laiatu Latu. I think
Yeah.
he's the best edge defender in this draft that I've watched. So fun to watch. But there are other options I didn't list. Those are just my favorite. I didn't expect Marcus Davenport to sign this quickly.
Hmm.
I thought he was potentially an option. Van Ginkel, I really liked that fit because the fact that, you know, the Rams essentially run a scheme that's derivative of the Vic Fangio scheme. And he just had his best year in the Fangio scheme. So I thought that could be an option. Jonathan Grenard is already off the board. So yeah, it's really the guys that I listed. Zadarius Smith is also off the board. One name I'll throw out there that's not an edge, but would be a nice inside linebacker option and was an first team all pro 2 years ago, Alexis. I don't know if it's going to happen. I have no inside info on this guy, but I love the fit. Devondre Campbell, who was just cut by the Packers. The reason I say that is because the Rams got Greg Williams, not the Bounty Gate one, Greg Williams with 1G. They got him from the Packers, who is the passing game coordinator, right? And he's the linebacker coach for the Rams now. So he was the passing game coordinator for the Packers last year. Now the linebacker coach for the Rams. Watch out for that. That's a signing I could see them doing down the road. They've done those before, getting guys like Ndamukong Suh later on in the process. So just, keep an eye on Twitter, have your notifications on. I mean, if you don't have notifications on for Schefter and Rappaport and free agency, I don't know what you're doing, but that's that.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I mean, like we said, guys, this has been day one, and this is going to go on for a while, but Jonah Jackson and Colby Parkinson, the Rams made some moves day one, which I wasn't expected, I don't think, from Jake or I. We didn't think that they would be this early to the free agency frenzy, but they were. I suspect that they will continue, and there's going to be some big trades going on, not just for the Rams, but other teams. A lot of free agency news that I know that NFL fans in general are awaiting. So it's just a really fun time. And then we're about a month and a half away from the draft. So that will be, I think as free agency goes on and we start to see the Rams' vision for free agency, then we'll be able to make our opinions about the draft and see what holes need to be filled and what the Rams' plan might be there. But for now, guys, I think it's coming. I think everybody who's really, really wanting the Rams to make some defensive moves, it's coming. I just don't know how soon. I don't know if it's going to be later tonight. I don't know if it's going to be this week. We don't have a crystal ball, but that's part of the fun. It's the anticipation and just getting the surprise, the shock. At least I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
I mean, hey, I'm really excited. A lot of stuff to feel good about. Wanted to also just real quick bring up that my report earlier in the year, it was September of 2023, the exclusive Matthew Stafford being set to star in season 2 of the Netflix series Quarterback. That was going to happen. And then Netflix canceled the Quarterback series because Matthew Stafford was the only one that wanted to do it. No other quarterback wanted to take part in that series. So the Rams media team pivoted. They pivoted to the idea of making a Matthew Stafford docu-series called Locked In. And it's going to, in April, I believe, it is going to be on NFL Network. So I am super stoked for that. And talk about a season in which you would want them filming every single movement of this quarterback, because it was a wild year. I am super stoked for it. I don't know about you, but I saw that news come out today, and I kind of had to sit on the whole quarterback thing because it was so up in the air. And people asked me, did they get rid of it? And to be honest with you, I think they're turning it into like a wide receiver one. Like, it's going to be kind of weird. I don't know. I'll check it out. But for those of you that were asking about that report over and over and over again, I had no details on it. I wasn't able to say. Can now say, now that it's out, the Rams were actually working on a docu-series because the Netflix project fell through. So that is that. I'm excited for the project. I'm excited for hopefully Danielle Hunter to be a Ram, and this upcoming 3-year run. I think it's going to be fun. Does not mean the Rams will never be back in the Super Bowl picture. This is just the 3-year window that they are telling us in regards to Stafford. That's the only thing that I would say. It has to do with Stafford. It aligns perfectly with his deal, and that's it.
Yeah, they're setting the stage right now. They're getting started. We talk about these moves with Jackson and Parkinson building blocks. We'll see what happens in the coming week, guys. Jake and I will be covering it on social media. We will do another podcast episode when Jake comes back in town, as he is going to be going out of town, so we won't be recording then. Have some more NFL draft prospect interviews coming out. And yeah, should be an exciting time. I'm really excited to talk with everybody and analyze these free agency moves, whatever the future ones might be. But until then, guys, that's going to do it for us. Like I said, we'll be back, but until then, you can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me at the Alexis Kraft on Twitter. You can follow Jake at JK and we will be back with hopefully some big news. But until then, guys, as always, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.